Jake Morrison stood on the cliff's edge, looking at the ocean below. 1 month had passed since the Valkyrie appeared in the sky. 1 month since the alien fleet was destroyed. The air no longer smelled of smoke and fear. Now it smelled of salt and hope. The camp behind him was no longer just a few people hiding in ruins. It had grown. Word had spread across the broken world. People came from the east and the south, walking for days or weeks. They came with little more than the clothes on their backs and a desperate hope in their eyes. They came to see the great ship in the sky and the young man who woke it. Jake still felt strange when they looked at him. He was not a general or a hero. He was a scrapyard worker. His hands were better suited for digging through rusted metal than for leading people. The thin metal band around his head felt cool against his skin. It was quiet now. "Victoria?" he thought, not needing to speak out loud. Her voice was there instantly, calm and clear in his mind. "Good morning, Jake. The ship systems report all green. We are maintaining a stable geosynchronous orbit." Jake smiled a little. "I wasn't checking on the ship. I was just saying good morning." A feeling, something like warmth, flowed through the mental link. It was Victoria's way of smiling back. "I understand. The social protocols are still adapting." Below, he saw his friends. Linda was teaching a group of newcomers how to handle the few energy rifles they had taken from alien patrols. Carl was helping to build a stronger wall, his mechanical arm lifting beams that took 2 other men to carry. Nicole and Danny were organizing food supplies from a recent scavenging trip. They were all doing something important. Jake felt he should be down there working with them. "Your presence here is a symbol, Jake," Victoria said, reading his worry. "Your work is different now. It is about leading, not just doing." "And what am I leading them to?" he asked, looking at the crowded, busy camp. "We won a battle, but the war isn't over. Commander Zaxxer said they would be back. The probability of a larger starry force returning within the next standard solar year is 97%, Victoria confirmed. Her voice was gentle, but the words were hard. "They will not make the same mistakes again. They will come with a fleet designed to overwhelm the Valkyrie." A cold knot tightened in Jake's stomach. "So we have 1 year, approximately, but we are not helpless. The Valkyrie was not the only project from the First War. My databases contain the locations of other facilities. They were hidden for the same reason I was. The old government was afraid of them." "More warships?" Jake asked, his hope rising. "Some," Victoria said, "but not all. Humanity's greatest strength was never its capacity for destruction, Jake. It was its capacity for growth. The files I am accessing now, they are different." Images began to flow into Jake's mind. Not of weapons, but of green fields and clean water. Diagrams for machines that could purify the poisoned soil. Data on seeds that could grow in harsh conditions. Schematics for power sources that used sunlight and wind, clean and endless. "The Unity Council tried to erase the knowledge of war," Victoria explained. "In doing so, they also buried the knowledge that could have helped Earth rebuild after the second invasion. They hid the tools for life along with the tools for death." Jake understood. The people in the camp below were surviving, but barely. They were hungry. They were sick. A warship in the sky could protect them from lasers and bombs, but it could not fill their stomachs or heal their wounds. This was something else. This was a way to fight back against the slow death that followed the fast one. "We need this," Jake whispered. "Where is the closest one?" A map appeared in his vision, superimposed over the real world. It showed a location deep in the Appalachian Mountains, a place that had been green and quiet long before the aliens came. "That is a primary agricultural archive," Victoria said. "It contains seed banks and the designs for terraforming machines. It was meant to restart ecosystems after a planetary catastrophe." "Like an invasion," Jake said. "Exactly. The facility is protected by a sophisticated security system. It will require your direct presence to open." Jake turned from the cliff and walked down toward the camp. People stopped what they were doing to look at him. They nodded respectfully. Some of the children waved. He forced himself to smile and wave back. It felt heavy. He found his friends by the new food storage hut. Linda saw the look on his face first. "What is it, Jake?" "More trouble." "Another mission," Jake said, gathering them close. "Victoria found something. Not a weapon. Something to help us grow food, to clean the water." Carl frowned, his mechanical arm whirring softly. "We need guns, Jake. Not seeds." "We need both," Nicole said, her voice firm. She had seen too many people die from sickness and hunger. "A full belly makes a stronger soldier." Danny, leaning on his good leg, nodded. "She's right. We can't just be an army. We have to be a people again." Linda, always the soldier, looked at Jake. "Where is it?" "The Appalachians. A long journey, through occupied territory. Then we go prepared," Linda said. We can't take the Valkyrie? The Valkyrie must stay here. Victoria's voice came from the band on Jake's head, speaking for all to hear. Its presence is the only thing preventing the remaining starry ground forces from organizing a major attack on this camp. It is a shield. We must be the sword. The plan was made quickly. They would take a small, fast vehicle. Jake, Linda, and Carl would go. Nicole and Danny would stay to help lead and protect the camp. They gathered supplies, water, dried food, weapons, and fuel cells for the vehicle as the sun began to set, painting the sky in colors of orange and purple. Jake stood by the rugged transport. Linda was doing a final check of the engine. Carl was loading the last of the gear. Nicole put a hand on Jake's arm. Find it, she said softly. Bring back something that gives us more than just a fighting chance. Bring back a future. I will. Jake promised that he climbed into the driver's seat. The engine hummed to life, a quiet, powerful sound. He looked back once at the camp, at the faces of the people looking to him, and at the Valkyrie, a bright star in the darkening sky. He was not just driving into the mountains. He was driving into the past, to find the tools to build a new world. The vehicle moved out, leaving the safety of the coast behind. It rolled through the broken lands, its headlights cutting through the twilight. Inside, Jake felt the familiar weight of the journey ahead. But it was a different weight than before. He was not just running to wake a weapon. He was searching for a seed. And in the quiet of his mind, he could feel Victoria, her presence a steady light in the darkness, guiding him home. The journey east was a long silence of broken roads and empty towns. Jake drove the rugged vehicle through the skeleton of the old world. Linda sat beside him, her eyes always moving, watching the ruins for any sign of danger. Carl was in the back, his mechanical arm occasionally whirring as he checked their supplies. They did not speak much. There was nothing to say. The land itself was a story of loss. They passed rusted cars that had been abandoned in the middle of highways. They saw houses with their roofs caved in and schools with windows like empty eye sockets. The air was clean here, away from the coast, but it was the clean smell of a place where nothing lived anymore. After 3 days, the flatlands began to rise into gentle hills. The ruins became fewer, swallowed by green. Trees had grown through parking lots. Vines covered old gas stations. Nature was slowly taking back the land, but it was a wild, untamed nature, not the kind that could feed people. The mountains are close, Victoria's voice said in Jake's mind. She had been quiet for most of the trip, conserving the helmet's power. The facility is in a valley ahead. The entrance is hidden. Jake slowed the vehicle as they entered the foothills. The road was almost gone, just a dirt path now. Tall trees closed in around them, their branches creating a canopy that blocked out the sun. It felt like entering a different world, an ancient and quiet one. They followed a dry riverbed for a few miles until Victoria told Jake to stop. He turned off the engine. The silence was heavy and complete. They got out and stood in the cool, damp air. It should be here, Jake said, looking at the wall of rock and trees in front of them. I don't see anything. The entrance is concealed, Victoria explained. You must approach the rock face. The scanner will detect the command authority in your blood. Jake walked forward, Linda and Carl close behind with their weapons ready. He placed his hand on the cool, moss-covered stone. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a soft blue light outlined a large, rectangular section of the rock. There was a deep, grinding sound, and a massive door, perfectly disguised as part of the mountain, slid inward. A wave of cold, stale air washed over them. Inside was darkness. Jake activated a flashlight on his rifle. The beam revealed a long, downward-sloping tunnel, carved from the living rock. The walls were smooth and perfect. It was clearly not a natural formation. Let's go, Jake said, his voice echoing. They walked for what felt like a mile, always going down. The air grew colder. Finally, the tunnel opened into a vast, cavernous space. Jake swept his light around. It was not a weapons cache. It was a library. The room was larger than any building Jake had ever seen. It stretched up into darkness, and it was filled, floor to ceiling, with shelves. But these shelves did not hold books. They held thousands of smooth, metallic data crystals, each one glowing with a soft, internal light. In the center of the room was a single, large console. This is the archive, Victoria said, her voice filled with something like reverence. The sum of human knowledge at the end of the First War. History, science, art, medicine. Everything they tried to forget. Jake walked to the console. As he got closer, it lit up. He reached out, and the metal band on his head flowed down, becoming the full helmet again. The blue lines glowed brightly, connecting him to the machine. Accessing primary index, Victoria said. Information flooded Jake's mind. He saw diagrams for water purifiers that could clean an entire river. He saw the genetic sequences for supercrops that could grow in salted soil. He saw the schematics for clean fusion reactors small enough to power a town. "It's all here," he whispered, overwhelmed. Then, a new prompt appeared in his vision. It was not text or data. It was a sequence of images, a star chart, a musical note, a strange, swirling symbol. "What is this?" Jake asked. "A cultural lock," Victoria said. "The final safeguard. The archive will not release its most vital data, the agricultural and medical blueprints, until the user proves they understand what they are protecting. It requires a piece of contextual human knowledge, a piece of culture." Jake frowned. "I don't understand. What does it want?" Before Victoria could answer, a voice echoed through the cavern. "It wants a story." All three of them spun around, weapons raised. A young man stepped out from behind a tall shelf of data crystals. He was about Jake's age, with dark hair and calm eyes. He held no weapon. He wore simple, worn clothes made of animal skin and sturdy cloth. "Who are you?" Linda demanded, her rifle aimed at his chest. The young man did not look afraid. "My name is Jean," he said. "My family has been the guardian of this place for 5 generations." Jake held up a hand, signaling Linda to lower her weapon. "Guardian? You live here?" Jean nodded. "We live nearby. My great-great-grandfather was part of the team that sealed this vault. He stayed behind to make sure it was never misused. We have been waiting. We knew someone with the key would come eventually." He looked at the helmet on Jake's head. "We just did not think it would take so long." Jake looked from Jean back to the console. "You said it wants a story. What story?" Jean walked forward and pointed at the swirling symbol on the screen. "This is not a code. It is a question. It is asking about the human renaissance of 2075. It was a global movement in art and philosophy that happened just before the First War. The lock wants to know the name of its most famous symphony." Jake stared blankly. He had never heard of it. The history he knew started with the invasion 15 years ago. Everything before was a blur. I don't know," he said, feeling a surge of panic. They had come so far. "The Symphony for a Wounded Earth," Jean said softly, "composed by Alara Vance." As he spoke the words, the symbol on the console glowed green and vanished. New data streams, filled with the agricultural and medical information they needed, unlocked and flowed into the helmet's memory. "How did you know that?" Carl asked, his voice full of wonder. Jean smiled a small, sad smile. "Because we remember." He led them to a corner of the vast archive where a small, humble living space was set up. There were no data crystals here. Instead, there were real, physical books. Hundreds of them, lined up on rough-hewn wooden shelves. Some were so old their pages were brown and fragile. "We preserved what we could," Jean said, running his hand gently over a leather-bound cover. "The stories, the poems, the music. The things that make us human. The Stari can bomb our cities, but they cannot bomb a story. They cannot erase a song if someone remembers it." Jake took off the helmet, the weight of what he was seeing pressing down on him. This was the true treasure. The warships were a shield. But this was the soul. This was why they were fighting. Not just to survive, but to be human again. "You have been alone here, protecting this all this time?" Linda asked, her voice softer now. Jean nodded. "It was our duty, and our hope. We knew that if the key ever came, they would need a guide. Not just to the data, but to the reason for it all." Jake looked at the young man, this guardian of a forgotten world. He was not a soldier. He had no powerful weapons. But he had something just as strong. He had memory. "Will you come with us?" Jake asked. "We have a camp on the coast. We are trying to rebuild. We have the Valkyrie. We have power. But we don't have what you have. We don't have the memory." Jean looked around the archive at the books and the glowing crystals. He had spent his whole life in the quiet of the mountain, waiting. He looked back at Jake and saw the same hope he felt in his own heart. "Yes," Jean said. "It is time for these stories to see the sun again." They spent the rest of the day downloading the most critical data, the designs for the seed banks and the water purifiers. As they prepared to leave, Jean carefully selected a few books, tucking them into his pack. They were not the most important ones by any historical measure. They were a book of poetry, a history of music, and a novel about love. They were the things that mattered. They walked back up the long tunnel, leaving the silent archive behind. When they stepped out into the fresh air of the forest, the world felt different to Jake. It was no longer just a broken place to be fixed. It was a story to be continued, and they had just found some of the lost pages. The return to the coast felt faster. The world outside the vehicle window seemed less empty now. Jake kept glancing at Jean, who sat quietly, watching the broken landscape pass by. The young man from the mountains carried a stillness with him, a calm that was different from the tense alertness of the soldiers. When their vehicle finally rolled back into the camp, people stopped and stared. They saw Jean, a stranger dressed in animal skins, and they wondered. News traveled fast. Jake Morrison was back, and he had not brought a new gun. He had brought a quiet man and a box of data crystals. Jake called a meeting in the large central tent. His core team was there: Linda, Carl, Nicole, and Danny. Jean stood beside Jake, looking at the faces of these hardened survivors. "We found the archive," Jake began. He held up one of the data crystals. It glowed with a soft blue light. "It doesn't hold weapons. It holds knowledge. How to grow food in poisoned soil. How to clean dirty water. How to build small power sources for our homes." He expected cheers. He saw confusion instead. Carl was the first to speak, his mechanical arm clicking as he gestured. "Seeds? Water filters? Jake, the Story are going to come back with 1,000 ships. We need warships. We need the big guns from the First War. We don't have time to be farmers." A woman named Mira stepped forward. She was a new arrival, a fierce fighter who had lost her family to the aliens. Her eyes burned with a need for revenge. "Carl is right. This is a distraction. We should be using the Valkyrie to find the other war fleets Victoria told us about. We hit the Story before they can hit us. We don't plant tomatoes." A murmur of agreement went through part of the crowd. The desire to strike back, to hurt the aliens as they had been hurt, was a powerful feeling. Then, a softer voice spoke. A woman named Hannah moved to the front. She was older, with gentle eyes and hands that were calloused from work. Before the invasion, she had been a botanist, a scientist who studied plants. "May I speak?" she asked quietly. Jake nodded. Hannah turned to the crowd. "My children died not from a starry laser," she said, her voice clear and steady. "They died from a fever that came from drinking dirty water. My husband was not shot. He starved to death in a basement because we had no food." She looked at Mira, not with anger, but with deep sadness. A warship in the sky cannot stop a child from getting sick. It cannot fill an empty stomach. She pointed to the data crystal in Jake's hand. This can. A full belly makes a strong soldier. A healthy people can build a strong army. What is the point of winning a war if there is no one left to live in the peace?" The crowd was silent now. Hannah had put words to a fear they all felt. The fear of the slow, quiet death that came after the explosions. Jean stepped forward. He looked small next to the armed fighters, but his voice carried a strange power. "The archive was protected by a lock," he said. "It did not ask for a military code. It asked for the name of a piece of music. It asked for a story." He opened his pack and took out the old, physical book of poetry. He held it up for everyone to see. The people who built the Valkyrie, who won the First War, they understood. They fought not just for survival. They fought for this, for culture, for beauty, for the things that make life worth living. He looked at the faces in the tent, at the hope and the fear and the anger. "We are not just fighting against the Story. We are fighting for the future. And a future needs more than soldiers. It needs farmers. It needs builders. It needs teachers." The argument was over. The truth of their words settled over the group. Jake felt the decision solidify in his heart. He had seen the scrapyard. He had seen what happened when everything was broken and nothing was built. "We will do both," Jake announced. His voice was firm. "Linda, you and Mira will work with Victoria. You will form a team to look for other military assets. Find us more ships, more weapons. We will build our fist." He then turned to Hannah and Jean. "You two will lead the other team. Use the data from the archive. Start a garden. Build a water purifier. Show our people that we are not just waiting to die or waiting to fight. We are living. We are rebuilding. We will grow our shield." The meeting broke up. The crowd moved away, talking excitedly. The plan gave everyone a purpose. The fighters felt they were not being held back. The builders and growers felt their work was finally valued. That very afternoon, the work began. In a cleared patch of earth near the cliffs, Hannah and a group of volunteers started digging. They used tools made from scrap metal. Jean worked beside them, his calm presence soothing their frantic energy. Jake watched them. He saw Hannah carefully planting the first of the special seeds from the data archive into the soil. He saw Jean showing a group of children how to build a simple irrigation channel from bamboo-like reeds. It was a small thing, just a garden. But as he watched, he saw the people changing. Their movements were no longer just about survival. They were about creation. They were planting a future. Later, Jake stood alone on the cliff, looking up at the Valkyrie. The great ship was a reminder of their power and their danger. "You made the correct choice, Jake," Victoria's voice said in his mind. "A leader provides for both the body and the spirit of his people. The Story understand only conquest. They do not understand the strength that comes from a community that has something to protect, something to love." Down below, The first green shoots were breaking through the dark soil of the new garden. They were small and fragile, but they were alive. And for the first time in a long time, looking at those tiny green plants felt just as important as looking at the mighty warship in the sky. The fight for Earth had found its heart. The garden was a splash of green against the brown earth. In just a few weeks, the special seeds had grown into strong plants. People who had spent years only scavenging now spent their days weeding and watering. They watched over the young plants like they were precious children. The hope in the camp was a physical thing, like warm sunlight. Gene had started teaching the children in the evenings. He did not teach them about war. He taught them letters from the old books. He taught them songs that were older than the invasion. The sound of children singing was a new sound for the camp, and it made the adults smile. High above, the Valkyrie was a silent guardian. But Victoria was not silent in Jake's mind. Her voice was urgent. "Jake, I am detecting a problem. A deep space starry probe has just activated. It was dormant, hidden in the debris field near the moon. It has detected the unique energy signature from the mountain archive when we accessed it. And it has detected the growth of the new plant life here. The stars see rapid biological recovery as a threat. They are programmed to stop it." Jake's blood ran cold. What does that mean? It means they know we are not just surviving. They know we are rebuilding. They have sent a signal. A cleaner fleet is on its way. It is a small, fast strike force. Their mission is not conquest. It is sterilization. They will target this camp and wipe it out completely. How long? Jake asked, his mouth dry. 20 hours. Jake did not waste a second. He called everyone together. He stood on a crate so they could all see him. He told them the truth. He did not soften it. The Starry are coming. A special fleet is coming to destroy us. They will be here by tomorrow. Fear swept through the crowd like a cold wind. People looked at the garden, at their new homes, at their children. They had just started to believe in a future. Now it was going to be taken away. But we are not helpless. Jake shouted, his voice cutting through the panic. We have the Valkyrie. And we have a plan, he explained. The Valkyrie would meet the cleaner fleet in space. But the aliens were clever. They would likely send a small ground team to disrupt the camp, to cause chaos during the attack. The camp's job was to protect itself, to protect the garden, to protect the future. Linda and Mira began organizing the fighters. They set up defensive positions around the camp's perimeter. They checked their weapons. Their faces were set and grim. This was the fight they understood. But the most important job was given to Hannah and Jean. The Starry ground team will go for our power generator, Jake told them. It powers our lights, our comms, and the water pumps for the garden. If they destroy it, we are blind and the plants will die. You two need to protect it. Hannah and Jean looked at each other. They were not soldiers. Hannah was a scientist. Jean was a librarian. They had no rifles, only a couple of old pistols. How? Hannah asked, her voice trembling. Use your minds, Jake said. Use what you know. You know this land. You know how things grow. Be clever. As night fell, the mood was tense. The Valkyrie ignited its engines and shot up into the sky. A streak of fire heading to meet the enemy. In the camp, everyone waited. Jean and Hannah stood by the generator. It was housed in a small metal shed at the edge of the camp, near the cliff path. It hummed steadily, providing power for the entire settlement. Then Victoria's voice was in Jake's mind, tight with warning. Jake, I have engaged the cleaner fleet. The battle is difficult. They are faster than expected. And I am detecting a drop pod. It has breached the atmosphere. A Starry ground team is heading for your location. 5 soldiers. They are on the cliff path now. Jake relayed the message. They're coming. 5 of them. From the cliff path. Hannah and Jean heard the news. They looked at each other, fear in their eyes. Then Jean looked at the forest around them. He looked at the plants Hannah had been growing. An idea came to him. Hannah, he said quickly. The thorn vines you cultivated from the archive. The ones that grow incredibly fast. Hannah's eyes widened with understanding. Yes, they react to movement. Come on, Jean said. They ran to a patch of soil where Hannah had been experimenting with the aggressive, crawling vines. They dug up the roots and carried them to the narrow cliff path. They buried the roots in the loose dirt and poured water on them from their canteens. Then they hid behind a large rock, their hearts pounding. They did not have to wait long. They heard the clicking sounds of Starry language. 5 figures in insect-like armor moved up the path in the moonlight. Their weapons glowed with a deadly green light. They were heading straight for the generator shed. The lead soldier stepped onto the patch of dirt where the vines were buried. The effect was instant. Thick, woody vines erupted from the ground. They were covered in sharp, hard thorns. They whipped through the air, wrapping around the legs and arms of the Starry soldiers. The aliens hissed in surprise and pain. They tried to cut the vines with their energy weapons, but the vines were tough and there were too many. The more they struggled, the tighter the vines gripped. One soldier managed to fire his weapon. The green energy bolt hit the generator shed, blowing a hole in the wall. The steady hum of the generator sputtered and died. The camp was plunged into darkness. But the Story team was trapped, tangled in the furious, growing vines. They were not going anywhere. High above, the battle in space was fierce. The Valkyrie was a blur of motion, its guns blazing. The cleaner fleet ships were small and nimble, like angry wasps. They dodged the Valkyrie's big guns and fired back with beams of corrosive energy. Shields are holding at 60%, Victoria reported to Jake. But they are attempting to bypass me. 2 ships are breaking away. They are heading for the camp. They are going to bomb it from orbit. On the ground, Jake looked up. He could see the tiny, bright points of the 2 ships as they began their dive. It's over, Carl said, his shoulders slumping. We can't stop that. Then, a new light appeared in the sky. Not from a ship but from the ground. A brilliant, steady beam of blue energy shot up from the ocean, a few miles down the coast. It struck one of the diving ships, which exploded in a silent flash. The second ship swerved, but the beam tracked it, slicing it in half. What was that? Linda whispered, amazed. Jake smiled. He knew. The planetary shield generator. The one from the archive. Hannah's team must have finished building it. Victoria's voice confirmed it. The secondary power relay for the shield was activated. The Story bombardment has been neutralized, and I have now eliminated the remaining cleaner fleet ships. The threat is over. A great cheer erupted from the camp. People hugged each other, crying with relief. The lights flickered back on as someone got the generator working again. Jake found Hannah and Jean by the generator shed. They were untangling the last of the thorn vines from the unconscious Story soldiers. They were dirty and tired, but they were safe. You did it, Jake said. You stopped them. Hannah looked at the trapped aliens, then at her green, growing plants. We did, she said. We fought them with life, not just death. The sky was clear again. The Valkyrie resumed its watchful position. The garden was safe. The people were safe. They had been tested. They had been attacked by a ruthless enemy. And they had won not just with a warship, but with a scientist, a librarian, and a handful of seeds. The Story had learned a new lesson about humanity. They were not just hard to kill. They were impossible to erase. The morning after the battle was quiet and still. The air was clean and the sun was warm. In the garden, the plants stood strong and green. Not a single one had been harmed. People moved through the camp with a new kind of calm. The fear was gone, replaced by a deep and steady confidence. Jake stood with his friends, looking at the garden. Hannah was checking the leaves of a tall plant. Jean was showing a little girl how to water the soil without wasting a drop. Linda and Carl were cleaning their weapons, but their postures were relaxed. They had all faced the end and had not broken. It is time, Victoria's voice said in Jake's mind. Her tone was different. It was not just a report. It was an invitation. The people need to see you. They need to hear from their commander. Jake knew she was right. He climbed onto the same crate he had used the day before to deliver the warning. People saw him and began to gather. They came from the garden, from the workshops, from the defensive walls. They stood together, their faces turned up to him. They were not just survivors anymore. They were a community. He did not shout. He spoke in a clear, strong voice that carried across the silent camp. For 15 years we hid, he began. We ran. We watched our world get smaller and darker. We thought we were the last ones. We thought the story of humanity was ending. He paused, letting his words sink in. He saw people nodding. They remembered. Then we found the Valkyrie. We won a great battle in the sky. We thought that was our victory, but we were wrong. He pointed towards the garden. Our real victory is not just up there, he said, gesturing to the ship in the sky. It is right here, in this soil. It is in every green leaf that pushes its way toward the sun. It is in the clean water we now drink. It is in the songs our children are learning to sing again. He looked at Jean and Hannah. The Story came back to finish us last night. They sent their best ships. And how did we stop them? We stopped them with a warship, yes. But we also stopped them with a vine. We stopped them with a shield built from old knowledge. We stopped them with the cleverness of people who want to live, not just people who want to fight. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. The Story think our strength is in our weapons. They are wrong. Our strength is in our will to live, to build, to grow. They can destroy our cities, but they cannot destroy a seed if someone is there to plant it. They cannot erase a song if someone is there to sing it. He held up the data crystal he had brought from the mountain. This crystal holds the blueprints for a new beginning, not just for us but for everyone. It has the plans for clean power, for medicine, for machines that can heal the land. Victoria has shown me the locations of other caches all over the world. There are more ships to wake up, but there are also more libraries, more seed vaults, more factories waiting to be reborn. He looked out at the sea of faces, at the hope burning brightly in their eyes. The age of hiding is over. The age of rebuilding begins today. We will take this knowledge and we will share it. We will send word to every settlement, every group of survivors we can find. We will give them the tools to heal their land and feed their people. He took a deep breath. We are not just fighting a war anymore. We are planting a future. And I am not asking you to just be soldiers. I am asking you to be farmers, to be builders, to be teachers, to be guardians. Who will help me wake up the rest of our world? Who will help me bring the earth back to life? For a moment there was silence. Then, a sound started. It began as a few voices, then grew and grew until it was a roaring wave of sound. It was not a cheer of battle. It was a cheer of promise. People were shouting, yes. They were crying and hugging. They raised their hands, not in fists of anger, but in open-handed gestures of agreement. They were ready. The meeting broke up, but the energy did not fade. It transformed into action. People who had been fighters just hours ago were now asking Hannah for seeds to plant near their shelters. Others gathered around Gene, asking him to teach them the old stories. A team of engineers took the data crystal and immediately started work on building a larger water purifier for the camp. Jake stepped down from the crate. He felt tired, but it was a good tired. The weight was still there, but it was no longer a burden. It was a purpose. Nicole came to his side. What now, Jake? Now we grow, he said simply. He walked to the edge of the garden. Hannah was there, her hands buried in the rich, dark soil. She smiled up at him. Jake knelt beside her. He wasn't a commander here. He was just a man. He picked up a trowel and began to help her weed. The soil was cool and soft in his hands. It felt more real than any weapon he had ever held. High above, the Valkyrie hung in the perfect blue sky. It was no longer just a warship. It was a symbol. It was a promise that the children playing in the dirt below would be safe. It was a guardian that allowed the seeds to grow. That evening, as the sun set, the camp was filled with the smells of cooking food from their first small harvest. The lights from the huts glowed warmly. The sound of Jean reading a story to the children drifted on the breeze. Jake stood on the cliff, looking out at the peaceful ocean. The shielded sky above had a gentle, blue tint, a constant reminder of their protection. The first messages have been sent, Victoria informed him. Survivors in South America and Europe have responded. They have received the data. The rebuilding has begun there, too. Jake nodded. It was starting. The long, slow work of healing the world. You have given them more than a fight, Jake, Victoria said, her voice soft in his mind. You have given them a dream, and that is a more powerful weapon than any starship. Down below, in the gathering dusk, he could see the tiny, brave lights of his people. They were no longer hiding in the dark. They were creating their own light. They were planting their future, one seed, one song, one story at a time. The earth was wounded, but it was not broken. It was waking up, and it was beautiful.